Turkey is facing one of the worst economic crises in its modern history. The signs have been building for years, but now in 2025, the situation is critical. And if things don't change fast, the country might face total economic collapse by 2026. So, what happened? "15 years ago, the Turkish lira was one of the strongest currencies in the region. In 2008, $1 could get you around 1.2 Turkish lira. Today, that same dollar is worth over 38 lira. That's not just a dip, it's a full-blown collapse. But it didn't happen overnight. It was the result of years of poor economic decisions from the top. For years, President Erdogan pushed for low interest rates even when inflation was rising. The Turkish central bank, under political pressure, slashed interest rates multiple times between 2019 and 2022. This hurt the value of the Turkish lira and made imports more expensive. The result? Skyrocketing prices. In 2022, inflation peaked at 85%, the highest in more than 2 decades. By 2024, it still hovered around 60%. Families who once lived comfortably could no longer afford groceries. As of July 2025, Turkey's inflation rate dropped to 33.52%, the lowest in almost 4 years. But that doesn't mean life has gotten easier. Food prices still rose nearly 28% compared to last year. Housing costs jumped over 62%, and even transportation went up by nearly 27%. A 100 lira bill, once enough for a few days, is now barely enough for a loaf of bread and some eggs. Monthly inflation is also rising again. In July 2025, prices went up by 2.06% in just 1 month. That's more than in June, when it was 1.37%. So even with signs of improvement, the cost of living is still climbing. Foreign investors have lost trust. International companies pulled money out. As confidence faded, so did the value of the lira. People began storing their savings in US dollars or euros by late 2024, and over 60% of household savings were in foreign currencies. Turkey tried to bounce back. After his re-election in 2023, Erdogan finally allowed his team to raise interest rates. The finance minister, Mehmet Şimşek, and a new central bank governor, Fatih Karahan, took charge. They raised interest rates from 8.5% to 50% in less than 2 years to stabilize the economy. And for a moment, it looked like things might improve. However, investors and citizens remain cautious. Why? Because Turkey has had 6 different central bank governors since 2019. Erdogan has fired many, even when the bank tries to do the right thing. No one's sure how long it'll last. Investors hesitate, fearing that the next leadership shakeup could reverse progress. Meanwhile, every day Turks continue to suffer. Parents skip meals so their kids can eat. According to UNICEF, nearly 1 in 3 children in Turkey live in poverty. Small businesses are closing. Unemployment is rising. And political tensions are only making the situation worse. Turkey's political climate today is deeply tied to its economic crisis. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, once loved for modernizing Turkey's economy, has moved towards authoritarianism. He's using the courts and media to silence opposition and tighten his grip on power. The shift began in 2017 with a constitutional referendum. This vote transformed Turkey from a parliamentary democracy to a presidential system and gave him powers over the judiciary and ministries. Since then, independent institutions have steadily weakened. One major example is Ekrem İmamoğlu, the popular mayor of Istanbul and considered Erdogan's biggest political threat. In March 2025, İmamoğlu was arrested just before being confirmed as the CHP's next presidential candidate. He isn't just a politician, but a man who runs a city of over 16 million people, almost 40% of Turkey's economy. His arrest on charges of financial fraud and running a criminal organization was widely seen as politically motivated. Although not imprisoned, he was banned from politics. This sparked nationwide protests, especially from students. Many began boycotting pro-government businesses and media. Even the AKP's far-right ally, the Nationalist Movement Party, MHP, is also showing signs of strain. MHP leader Devlet Bahçeli publicly questioned the charges against Imamoglu and even supported a political solution to the Kurdish conflict. Another big sign came in March 2024. For the first time since 2001, AKP lost Turkey's major cities in the local elections. The Republican People's Party, CHP, the main opposition, won. Cities like Ankara, Izmir, and especially Istanbul went back to the opposition. After more than 2 decades in power, President Erdogan's Justice and Development Party, AKP, is now facing serious cracks in its control. But instead of adjusting, the government has responded with more pressure. Courts are no longer independent. Free press? Practically gone. Turkey now ranks 165th out of 180 countries on the World Press Freedom Index. Nearly 90% of the national media is either state-owned or controlled by Erdogan's allies. Critical journalists face harassment, jail, or exile. In 2023 alone, dozens of journalists were arrested under vague anti-terror laws. Political rivals are silenced through legal pressure. Since the elections, over 10 mayors have been removed from office. Erdogan has been hollowing out Turkey's democratic institutions, one step at a time, a move that drew huge criticism from the European Union, further creating problems for its geopolitical standing. Turkey's foreign policy in the past decade has pushed the country into deeper isolation, both politically and economically. One major turning point was Turkey's decision to buy the Russian S-400 missile defense system in 2019. This deal triggered US sanctions and led to Turkey's removal from the F-35 fighter jet program. As a NATO member, purchasing weapons from Russia raised serious concerns about Turkey's long-term reliability. In the eastern Mediterranean, Turkey's drilling for gas near Cyprus caused tensions with Greece and the EU. The country also sent military forces to Libya and northern Syria and launched airstrikes in northern Iraq. These actions were framed as national security efforts, but they isolated Turkey from Europe and even some Arab countries. Countries like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE view Ankara's actions as threats to their own regional influence. In fact, the Arab League has repeatedly criticized Turkey's military presence in Syria and Iraq. By 2024, relations with the United States remained cold. Turkey had delayed Sweden and Finland's NATO membership bids for months, using its position for political concessions. This made Western allies question whether Turkey was acting as a true partner or just using NATO for its own interests. Economically, this isolation came at a cost. Direct foreign investment dropped significantly, falling from over $20 billion in 2007 to under $10 billion in recent years. International investors now see Turkey as unstable, not only due to its internal economy, but because of the unpredictability of its foreign policy. Turkey's relationship with Russia also adds complexity. While they cooperate on energy and trade, they support opposite sides in Syria and Ukraine. Turkey even hosted grain deal negotiations between Russia and Ukraine in 2022, but didn't maintain a lasting diplomatic lead. This geopolitical zigzag has left Turkey with fewer allies and less trust. But the nation's problems aren't just political or economic. Natural disasters have exposed even deeper problems. According to the 2024 World Risk Report, Turkey ranks 35th among 193 countries for disaster risk. That puts it in the high-risk category due to frequent natural disasters and a fragile infrastructure system that's simply not ready to handle them. Let's take earthquakes first. Turkey sits on major fault lines, making it one of the most earthquake-prone regions in the world. The 7.8 magnitude earthquake that struck in February of 2023 was a clear example. It hit 11 provinces in southern Turkey, leaving behind over 53,000 dead and entire cities in ruins. The government's slow and poorly coordinated response added to the devastation. In some areas, survivors had to dig through the rubble with their bare hands, only to find their loved ones frozen to death. Turkey's vulnerability score in the World Risk Report stands at 23.55, but the real concern is the lack of coping capacity, scored at 50.01. That means when disaster hits, their system is unable to respond effectively. Moreover, Turkey is also battling flash floods and wildfires on a regular basis. In 2021, the country faced its worst wildfires ever. 9 people died, thousands were displaced, and nearly 32,000 acres of land were destroyed. Shockingly, the country had no working firefighting planes at the time. It was only after international pressure that Turkey accepted outside help. In 2024, Turkey had already experienced at least 74 wildfires, burning over 12,910 hectares of land. This is just the beginning. With climate change, Turkey is expected to face even more extreme weather events. The government has been in power for over 2 decades, but not enough has been done to build safer buildings or improve disaster response. This makes life harder for millions of people, leaving them helpless and in unrest. The current crises are changing the way people think about their future, especially youth. A 2024 Conda survey showed that over 70% of young people in Turkey want to leave the country. Why? Because they no longer see a future at home. Jobs are scarce, education feels worthless without opportunities, and the cost of living keeps rising. This brain drain is serious. Doctors, engineers, and students are moving to Europe, Canada, and the US. Over 330,000 people emigrated from Turkey in 2023 alone, many of them highly educated. That's a massive loss for a country already struggling to recover. Social unrest is also growing. Students protested at Bogazici University after a government-appointed rector took over, sparking nationwide debates. In smaller towns, anger is building as unemployment and hopelessness grow. Youth unemployment is now over 25%, pushing more young people toward activism. All of this reflects a dangerous reality. When people lose faith in their currency, their leaders, and their future, they leave, or they rebel, or they simply give up. And in Turkey, we're seeing all three. Experts say that if Turkey doesn't make big changes soon, like fixing its central bank policies, stopping corruption, and restoring international trust, it could face a full financial collapse by 2026. That could mean a banking crisis, high job losses, and more protests. Turkey still has time to avoid collapse, but only if it acts fast. The next 2 years are critical. What do you think? Is there still time to turn things around? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more such videos. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one.